It is important that we are proactive in preparing our homes and vehicles for an emergency situation. Let's find out how and why with Kathy Clark from the County of Simcoe.
Hi, I'm Kathy Clark. I'm the Manager of 911 and Emergency Planning for the County of Simcoe and the Community Emergency Management Coordinator. I'd like to talk to you today about some of the important concepts of personal emergency preparedness. We're going to talk about 4 simple things that you can do to be ready for a large community emergency. Something that impacts more than just one family or a couple of families. Things like tornadoes, industrial accidents or transportation accidents, outbreaks of disease, acts of crime, and other types of emergencies that happen in our community. We're also going to learn what you need to put in your emergency preparedness kit. And that's very, very important for you if an emergency strikes and you need to stay at home for several days. The other thing that's important for you to know are the 2 terms that you may hear that you don't hear at any other time. The first of those is shelter in place. If we have an emergency that involves a chemical disbursement to the air, we may ask you to shelter in place in your own home or office at the time of the emergency. This means you'll be stuck inside with the windows closed and the ventilation system turned off. The other term that you'll need to know is evacuation. This is when there's something threatening your safety in your immediate neighborhood, whether you're at work or at home, and you may need to leave that area quickly. When we talk about your emergency preparedness kit, you'll recognize that you'll want to have that to take with you if you do need to evacuate. The good thing to know is that all across Ontario, we have evacuation plans in place, and we will be ready to take care of your needs if we do ask you to evacuate. The most important thing for us to talk about today is an emergency preparedness kit. And I've got 2 sample kits with me. The first here right in front of me is your home preparedness kit. And just over here to my right is your car preparedness kit. Both are very important to have prepared. In your home kit, I'm going to touch on a couple of things that are really critical. The first is some non-perishable food. Now this is a special type of meal that is prepared specifically for emergency kits, but you don't need to get this fancy. You can actually just have some canned goods that include some protein in particular. And of course, if you've got cans in your kit, you're going to want to include a can opener. The other thing that's very important, especially if you are in a shelter-in-place situation, is drinkable water, or potable water, as your emergency officials will call it. We do recommend that you have 4 liters per person per day. And yes, that's a lot of water. So 2 liters per day is for drinking, and that's the minimum standard. The other 2 liters are for bathing and for cooking. We recommend that at least once a year, you take a look at your kit and replace the non-perishable food and the drinking water so that it is as fresh as possible. The other important thing to have in your kit is a radio. Now this is a special kind of radio that is made for emergencies. It runs on both batteries or you can crank it by hand. A couple of benefits to the hand cranking. First of all, it doesn't matter if your batteries are old or you forgot to put them in your kit, but it also keeps kids busy for 72 hours. They can keep cranking that for you and feel that they're having an important role. Oftentimes people forget this simple item in their kit. This is what we call a pot. Okay, no, it's obviously not a cooking pot, but it's actually a plain old telephone. And you'll see it doesn't have an electrical cord. It just plugs into the telephone jack. And this is important because it works to call 911 even in the event of a power outage. The other thing that we really encourage you to have is medication. If you have life-saving medication, for instance insulin, you may have asthma inhalers or heart medication that you are absolutely dependent on. If you can have an extra supply in your kit, that's great, but at the very least, if you can have a copy of your prescription, we can help you fill that if need be during an actual emergency. We also recommend that you have at least a small amount of cash, even $20. The other type of kit we're going to talk about briefly is your car emergency preparedness kit. This is something that most people do a much better job of having than their home kit. And that's because I think we spend so much time in our cars, and virtually all of us have experienced either being stuck behind a big accident, being stuck in a snowstorm, and we tend to be a little bit more ready in our cars. This is an emergency tool that both cuts your seatbelt and will actually break the window as well. Important to have that inside the car and not in your trunk. You will also want to have something that is both a radio and a flashlight. You can have them separately as well, but this is a very simple tool that doesn't require batteries and is cranked by hand and acts as both a flashlight and a radio. You'll want to have some emergency candles for heat, remembering, of course, that candles and matches can cause fires, and you'll want to use those safely. You'll want to attract attention to yourself. And this is called an LED wand, and when activated, it sends off a very bright light signal that can be seen from a very great distance away. First aid kit is very important, as well as a shovel and booster cables for those winter emergencies. You will probably want to have a warming blanket and a poncho, as well as water and emergency foods such as protein bars. For more information on how you and your family can be prepared in an emergency, I hope you'll take some time to visit simcoe.ca. There you'll find our emergency preparedness guide for families. You will also find our emergency preparedness guide for people with special needs, such as hearing impairment, visual impairment, or limited mobility. Being ready for an emergency is simple. Don't be afraid, just be ready.